Hi, Mystery Recapped here. Today, I'm going to explain a horror, mystery, and let's face it, comedy movie called The Pope's Exorcist. Spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. The movie opens in 1987 in Italy, where we meet a priest named Father Gabriel Amorth. He is the Pope's chief exorcist and is currently on his way to help a possessed boy. Upon his arrival, he is informed that the boy has been acting strangely and is speaking in English despite never knowing the language. Gabriel then asks if there is a TV in the home, to which the boy's father says yes. "And do you have the Golf Channel?" says Russell Crowe in an accent worse than mine. Next, the exorcist enters the room, accompanied by a local priest and a pig. The possessed boy immediately starts abusing him in English, but Gabriel responds by insulting the demon, claiming that he is weak and incapable of possessing anyone other than a helpless boy. This offends the demon, who claims to be powerful and capable of possessing anyone. Therefore, Gabriel challenges him to go ahead and possess the pig. After much provocation, the idiotic demon falls into the trap and exits the boy's body. As soon as he transfers into the pig, the local priest shoots and kills the poor animal. With this, the boy is finally free of the possession, and Gabriel tells him to relax, as the devil is gone. Next, we meet a woman named Julia and her two children, Amy and Henry, who have just arrived in Spain from the US. Julia's husband died a year ago, and Henry has been mute ever since. The reason they are in Spain is because her husband left them an inheritance, which is an old monastery that belonged to his family. Julia now plans to restore the property so that they can sell it and return to the US for a better life. When the family arrives at the monastery, they are greeted by the contractor in charge of the construction work. They also meet Father Thomas Esquibel, a priest who is there to ensure that the monastery's architecture is respected during its restoration, since it is important to the church. Meanwhile, Henry begins to wander around the house alone and eventually ends up in the basement. There, he notices a hole in the wall, through which he sees something with the Vatican symbol. On the other hand, Father Gabriel arrives in Rome and is confronted by church leaders for performing an exorcism without the Vatican's permission. A man named Bishop Lumumba is sympathetic to Gabriel, but Cardinal Sullivan is harsh toward him. He argues that exorcism is unnecessary in the modern scientific world they live in. You can just force the demon to watch a Blippi marathon and they'll be gone in no time. In response, Gabriel explains that only 2% of requests he receives necessitate exorcism, with the remaining 98% involving some kind of mental illness. He claims that since the boy was not truly possessed, the procedure doesn't qualify as an exorcism. Then how was the boy speaking English, and why did he kill the pig? Despite this, Sullivan continues to scold him, so Gabriel inquires whether it is truly about the boy or if they're mad at him for what he wrote about a girl named Rosaria in his magazine. He then says that if they have a problem with him, they should speak to his superior, the Pope, and proceeds to walk away. Sullivan yells at him to stop, insisting that the meeting is not ended, but Gabriel ignores him and exits the room. Back at the monastery, a worker comes across the same hole in the wall that Henry discovered earlier. He soon uncovers a hidden area and ignites a flare to see what is behind the blocks. However, it turns out that there is a gas leak in the area, which causes a massive explosion. The man is seriously injured in the fire and is immediately rushed to the hospital. Due to the severity of the incident, the contractor realizes that the site is too dangerous to continue working on and cancels the restoration work. Later, we find out that the gas explosion tore through some hidden walls, releasing a dangerous demon trapped inside. It quickly takes over Henry, causing him to convulse and have violent seizures. When Henry's family rushes to help him, he suddenly speaks in a demonic voice. He warns that they will all die before violently scratching his own face. And this kid watches tons of Blippi, so he'll be immune to the tech. Bring on the exorcist. A terrified Julia then rushes Henry to the hospital, where he is sedated and eventually calms down. However, after some tests, the doctors inform her that there is nothing physically wrong with the boy. They explain that the seizures must have been caused by psychological trauma. They thus instruct her to take Henry home and provide some sedatives in case he lashes out again. Later, in the middle of the night, the lights begin to flicker and Henry experiences another seizure. Julia tries to help him, but he starts saying obscene things to her, and the word hate appears on his belly. She then tries to call for a doctor, but the possessed boy boy orders her to summon the priest instead. Desperate for help, she calls Father Thomas and pleads with him to help her son. However, when the man enters the room, the demon throws him against a piece of furniture, claiming that he is not the priest he requires. Days later, the news reaches the Vatican, and the Pope summons Gabriel to inform him of the possessed boy in Spain. He orders the exorcist to go there and handle the situation, since he is the best person for the job. Gabriel agrees without hesitation, but the Pope warns him to be extremely cautious because he has a bad feeling about that place. He reveals that the monastery has a bad reputation and has caused numerous problems in the past. Following this, the chief exorcist investigates everything he can about the monastery and prepares to head to Spain. Upon his arrival, he is greeted by Father Thomas, who appears to be a fan of his work.
I love what you do with the demons.
The young priest then leads Gabriel inside and introduces him to Julia and Amy, who are both stressed about the boy's condition. After a brief conversation, Gabriel enters Henry's room and finds him sitting peacefully. He gets straight to work and begins reciting a prayer, causing the demon to awaken. Gabriel asks what it wants, and the demon says,
I have come for you.
The two then speak in Latin, with the exorcist attempting to trick the demon into revealing his name. However, the demon responds that he's not like the other fools who could be persuaded to possess a pig. He then starts mocking the priest and admits that he knows Gabriel's name and his nightmares and sins. At this moment, the possessed boy vomits a red bird out of nowhere. This freaks out the exorcist, prompting him to leave the room. After sending the family to rest, Gabriel speaks with Thomas and teaches him some lessons about demons so he can help in the exorcism. He explains that they must know the demon's name at all costs because it is the only way to help Henry. However, Gabriel warns the young priest not to look the demon in the eyes or interact with him in any way. He instructs Thomas to concentrate solely on the prayer, while Gabriel handles the rest of the exorcism's tasks. After this, both priests enter the room and begin the exorcism. Henry hurls numerous insults and blasphemies at him, but the priests remain calm. At this critical moment, the lights go out, and Gabriel notices Rosaria standing in front of him. She accuses him of allowing her to die and claims that he will atone for his sins. Gabriel says that his sins have been forgiven, but she responds that deep down, he still cannot forgive himself. Following this, the demon turns his attention to Thomas, revealing that he slept with one of the girls in his congregation and used her to satisfy his lust. Thomas is outraged to hear this and orders the demon to stop talking. However, the latter continues to say obscene things about the girl, pushing the young priest over the edge. Unable to bear it any longer, Thomas attacks the boy and tries to suffocate him in anger. However, Gabriel intervenes and takes him outside to calm him down.
We've all touched the children. You have to relax.
Later, when they're alone, Thomas tells them about Adele, a young woman mentioned by the demon earlier. He admits that they loved each other deeply, and Adele had asked him to leave the priesthood to be with her. However, Thomas was unable to do so because his love for God outweighed his love for her. He bursts into tears, admitting that even after all these years, he still feels guilty about what happened. After this, Thomas inquires about Rosaria, but Gabriel only responds that she was a woman from his past whom he should have helped. He goes on to say that the demon is using their pasts to distract them from something more important. Hearing this, Thomas recalls the incident from a few days prior. He was thrown off by the demon as it claimed he was not the desired priest. This makes Gabriel realize that the demon was looking for him, and the boy is just a pawn. He also remembers the Pope's words and decides to investigate the place to find more details. After some looking around, Gabriel discovers a dry well outside with a Vatican seal. He pries it open and discovers the interior of the well stacked with skulls. When he drops an ignited piece of paper into it, a massive explosion of flames erupts from the well. Afterward, he brings Thomas with him and shows him this disturbing sight. They then realize that this place was once the site of the Spanish Inquisition, one of the darkest eras of the Catholic Church. Back then, Catholics killed anyone who refused to convert, and these skulls must be the remains of victims of those atrocities. Next, the two priests head to the basement in search of answers and find the site where the explosion had occurred. They discover a large hole with a Vatican seal on it. The priests then venture inside and find that it leads to ancient catacombs. In these catacombs, they discover the remains of several people who had failed exorcisms during ancient ancient times. Elsewhere, Julia finds her daughter missing from her bed and soon discovers her hanging out with Henry. It turns out that both siblings have become possessed and they begin speaking to her in a disturbing manner. Poor Julia tries to save her daughter, but Henry quickly throws her against the wall and even causes her sister to horribly twist her neck. Returning to the crypt, the duo progresses deeper and soon comes across the body of Friar Alonso de Ojeda, a famous exorcist from the past. They also discover his detailed journal, which describes how he was once possessed by a demon. The demon was so evil and powerful that Ojeda had to encase himself in the monastery's underground to protect the world from the spirit of unending evil. Reading this, Thomas deduces that the demon called for Gabriel because he wanted to possess the most powerful host possible. And I mean, just look at this unit. The two priests then go underground in the crypt, where they finally discover the demon's name, Asmodeus. At this moment, the devil weakens, and Amy is finally free of her possessions. She then immediately injects a sedative into her brother and calms him down. Before confronting the demon, Gabriel realizes he must confess the things that still haunt him. He thus opens up to Thomas about Rosaria and how he was appointed to cure her possession. However, Gabriel was convinced that she wasn't possessed, but rather mentally disturbed. He didn't want to help her and passed her case to someone else. Unfortunately, a few days later, the poor woman took her own life by jumping from a building right in front of him. Gabriel later discovered that she had been abused by Vatican officials, but the incident was covered up. Therefore, he still carries the guilt of not helping her when she needed him the most. After this, Gabriel reunites the family and prepares everyone for the final battle against evil. He gives Thomas a consecrated medallion and blesses Julia and Amy for protection. They then approach Henry, who is now horribly deformed and unrecognizable. As the exorcism begins, Asmodeus starts to show the priests visions of their sins, but they no longer fall for his tricks. Everyone prays non-stop, and when the boy squirms, it seems like they've won. However, a few moments later, the demon writes on his belly, "God is not here," and possesses Amy again. He then makes her walk like a spider and brutally attacks her mother. As the demon continues to wreak havoc, he informs Gabriel that he can put an end to it all by surrendering. Asmodeus reveals that his entire strategy has been to possess the chief exorcist, and he doesn't care about the family. With no other option, Gabriel agrees to give himself up, and the demon finally leaves the children's bodies. In the aftermath, Thomas urges Gabriel not to go through with this, but the latter asks him to take the others to safety. The young priest is devastated, but he obeys the orders and leads the family outside in the car. Meanwhile, inside the monastery, Gabriel is gradually being possessed by the demon. Desperate to escape the torment, he attempts to take his life in a variety of ways, but all of them fail. He then makes his way out to the catacombs where the body of Ojeda lies. Gabriel tries to ignite himself, hoping to burn to death, but he is suddenly stopped by the apparition of Rosaria. Sometime later, when Thomas returns to the monastery, he finds a completely possessed Gabriel sitting in the same spot where the corpse of Ojeda was. Thomas immediately starts praying non-stop and urges Gabriel to fight through the demonic haze. After a lot of chanting, the demon finally leaves Gabriel's body, but he still refuses to give up. He soon transforms into Rosaria and Adele to taunt the priests, but both bravely fight back this time. Thomas then uses the medallion Gabriel gave him to eliminate Adele, causing her to explode. Meanwhile, Gabriel places a cross on Rosaria's forehead before sending the demon into the infernal abyss. After the demon is defeated, the priests seal the entrance between the two worlds. A few days later, Thomas and Gabriel return to Vatican City, where the Pope congratulates them on their success. They also learn that Julia's family has safely returned to the US and that Henry is recovering. Bishop Lumumba then takes the two priests to the church's archive, where he reveals that Asmodeus was only one of 200 demons who fell from heaven and landed in evil sites. This means that there are still 199 other sites that need to be investigated. Russell Crowe just became an anime character. Fortunately, they found a map of these sites among the monastery's documents. The Pope assigns Gabriel to oversee this mission and take care of the remaining sites. The exorcist readily agrees, as long as he can bring his trusted companion, Father Thomas, who I guess we're all supposed to collectively forget was outed for pulling a Dr. Disrespect at the beginning of this movie. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.